She said, "If you don't like me partying with my exes, that's your problem." I said, "You're right." Then I packed my stuff, moved into my own place, and posted a picture of my new key with the caption, "Problem solved." I'm Alex, 28 years old, and I thought I had it all figured out. My girlfriend Mia and I had been together for 2 years, living in a decent apartment in downtown Seattle, splitting rent 50-50, doing the whole modern relationship thing. She worked in marketing, I was in software development, and on paper we looked perfect together. But here's the thing about paper. It tears pretty easily when you put enough pressure on it. Mia was what you'd call a social butterfly, the kind of person who knew everyone at every bar in a 10-mile radius, who got invited to 3 different parties every weekend and somehow managed to hit all of them. At first, I loved that about her. She was fun, spontaneous, always dragging me out of my apartment to meet new people and try new things. I was more of an introvert, comfortable with my small circle of friends and my routine, so dating someone like Mia felt like an adventure. The problem started about 6 months into our relationship when I began noticing a pattern. Mia had a lot of guy friends, which was fine, but a concerning number of them were her exes. Not just 1 or 2. I'm talking about at least 5 guys she'd dated or hooked up with who were still very much part of her social circle. She'd tell me stories about her past with these guys like it was nothing, laughing about their old inside jokes, reminiscing about trips they'd taken together, and I'd sit there smiling like an idiot, pretending it didn't bother me. I didn't want to be that guy. You know, the insecure, jealous boyfriend who couldn't handle his girlfriend having male friends. So I pushed it down, told myself I was being mature and progressive and all that stuff. But every weekend it was the same thing. Mia would get dressed up, looking absolutely incredible, and head out to some party where I knew at least 2 or 3 of her exes would be. Sometimes she'd invite me along, and I'd go, and I'd watch her hug these guys a little too long, laugh a little too hard at their jokes, touch their arms when she talked to them. Other times she'd go alone, telling me I'd be bored or that I had work the next day or that it was just going to be a small thing. Those nights I'd stay home, trying to focus on a movie or a video game, checking my phone every 15 minutes like a pathetic teenager. My buddies told me I was being played, that no girl keeps that many exes around unless she's keeping her options open, but I defended her every time. My friend Mike was especially vocal about it, saying I deserved better, but I just brushed him off. Mia wasn't like that. I'd say she was just friendly, just social, just had a different perspective on relationships than most people. The breaking point came on a Friday night in late September. Mia's friend Jess was throwing a birthday party at her place, and Mia had been talking about it all week. I'd had a brutal day at work, dealing with a major bug in our system that took 12 hours to fix, and when I got home at 8 p.m., exhausted and hungry, Mia was already half ready, makeup done, wearing this tight black dress I'd only seen her wear for special occasions. She asked if I was coming, and I said yeah. Just give me 30 minutes to shower and change. She got this look on her face, sort of annoyed, sort of guilty, and suggested maybe I should just stay home and rest, that I looked tired and the party was going to be pretty wild. Something in my gut told me to ignore that suggestion, so I took the fastest shower of my life, threw on clean clothes, and told her I was good to go. The party was exactly what I expected: loud music, too many people crammed into a small apartment, cheap beer and cheaper wine flowing freely. Mia immediately disappeared into the crowd, and I grabbed a beer and found a corner to stand in, making small talk with people I barely knew. About an hour in, I saw Mia on the other side of the room, and she was talking to this guy I recognized from her Instagram. His name was Connor, and they'd dated for almost a year before me. They were standing really close, her hand on his chest, both of them laughing like they were the only 2 people in the room. I watched for maybe 5 minutes, waiting for her to remember I existed, but she never even glanced my way. So I walked over, casual as I could manage, and put my arm around her waist. She jumped a little, like she'd forgotten I was even at the party, and introduced me to Connor like we'd never met before, even though we definitely had. Connor gave me this smug little smile and said something about how lucky I was, and Mia giggled and agreed. I stood there for another minute, feeling like a complete fool, then told Mia I was going to get another beer. She barely acknowledged me, already back to her conversation with Connor. I didn't get another beer. I went outside, stood on the porch in the cold air, and tried to figure out what the hell I was doing. When I came back inside 20 minutes later, I couldn't find Mia anywhere on the main floor. I checked the kitchen, the living room, even the bathroom. Nothing. Then I heard her laugh coming from upstairs, that specific laugh she did when she was flirting, and something in me just snapped. I went up those stairs, and there she was, sitting on a bed in one of the bedrooms with Connor and 2 other people, passing around something I'm not going to name, but you can probably guess. She saw me in the doorway and her eyes went wide. But instead of getting up or looking embarrassed, she just smiled and waved me over like everything was cool. I didn't wave back. I turned around, walked back downstairs, and waited by the door. 10 minutes later, she came down, annoyed now, asking what my problem was. I told her we needed to talk, and she said we could talk at home, but I said no, we're talking now. We went outside, and I asked her straight up what she was doing upstairs with Connor. She rolled her eyes, told me they were just hanging out, that I was being paranoid and controlling. I asked her if she could understand why it might bother me that she was alone in a bedroom with her ex at a party. That word, insecure. She threw it at me like a weapon, said she honestly couldn't understand why I was so insecure. It hit me like a slap. I wasn't insecure, I was being disrespected, and there's a huge difference between the two. I told her I wasn't comfortable with how much time she spent with her exes, that it wasn't about trust, it was about boundaries and respect. And that's when she said it, the line that changed everything. She looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you don't like me partying with my exes, that's a you problem." She said it loud enough that a few people on the porch turned to look, and she didn't even care. She continued, saying I needed to deal with my issues, that she wasn't going to change who she was or who her friends were just because I couldn't handle it, that plenty of guys would be fine with her lifestyle. And you know what? She was absolutely right. It was my problem. My problem was that I was in a relationship with someone who didn't respect me, who prioritized her exes over my feelings, who made me feel crazy for having basic boundaries. And I was done having that problem. I looked at her, and I felt this weird calm wash over me, like clarity hitting all at once. I said, "You're right, it is my problem, and I'm about to solve it." Then I called an Uber, went back to our apartment, and started packing my stuff. Mia got home around 3 in the morning, and by then I had 2 suitcases packed and all my important documents in a folder. She walked in, saw the luggage by the door, and just froze. She asked what I was doing, and I told her exactly what it looked like. I was moving out. She tried to laugh it off at first, said I was being dramatic, that we just needed to sleep and talk about it in the morning like adults. I told her there was nothing to talk about, that she'd made her position very clear and I was making mine just as clear. That's when the panic set in her eyes. She started crying, saying she didn't mean it, that she was just annoyed and said something stupid. The begging started. She loved me, didn't want me to leave, would do anything to fix this. I stayed calm, told her I believed she loved me in her own way, but her way wasn't enough for me anymore. She grabbed my arm, literally begging me to stay, promising she'd cut off all her exes, that she'd change everything. But here's the thing. I didn't want her to change for me. I wanted to be with someone who already had the same values I did, someone who didn't need a breakup threat to understand basic respect. I finished packing while she cried on the couch, took my stuff, and left. I crashed at my buddy Mike's place for 3 days while I apartment hunted, and let me tell you, those 3 days were chaos. Mia called me 67 times. Yes, I counted, sent hundreds of texts, showed up at Mike's apartment twice until he told her he'd call the cops if she came back. She was posting cryptic stuff on social media, sad songs on her Instagram stories, the whole performance. My phone was blowing up with mutual friends asking what happened, telling me Mia was devastated, suggesting I was overreacting. But I held firm, didn't respond to her calls, didn't engage with the drama. On day 4, I found a studio apartment in Capitol Hill, nothing fancy, but it was mine, all mine, and I signed the lease that same afternoon. The landlord gave me the keys on a Friday, and I stood in that empty apartment feeling lighter than I had in months. I took a picture of those keys in my palm, posted it on Instagram with the caption, "Problem solved," and turned off my phone. When I turned it back on 2 hours later, my notifications were insane. Mia had called 14 times, left voice messages that progressed from angry to sobbing to angry again. She'd commented on my post, then deleted it, then read me a long paragraph about how cruel I was being, how I was humiliating her publicly, how everyone was asking her what happened. I didn't respond to any of it. Over the next 2 weeks, I focused on setting up my new place, got a used couch from Facebook Marketplace, hung up some posters, made it feel like home. I also started boxing, something I'd always wanted to try, but Mia thought was too aggressive and dangerous. Found a gym 3 blocks from my apartment, signed up for beginner classes, and discovered I actually loved it. The physical exhaustion, the focus it required, the way I could punch out all my frustration into a heavy bag. It was exactly what I needed. Mia's attempts to contact me got more desperate. She showed up at my office building twice, and the second time the receptionist called me before letting her up, so I just stayed in a conference room until she left. She sent me flowers with a card that said, "I'm sorry, please come back," which I immediately threw away. She even tried to get my mom involved, calling her and crying about how much she missed me, but my mom had never really liked me anyway and just told her to respect my decision. Then, about 3 weeks after I moved out, I met up with our mutual friend Derek for coffee. Derek had always been straight with me, never took sides, just told it like it was. We were talking about everything that happened when he got quiet and said there was something I should probably know. He looked uncomfortable as hell, but he told me that that Connor from the party, had been bragging at a bar the week before about how he and Mia had hooked up a few times during our relationship. Derek said he didn't know if it was true or if Connor was just being a jerk, but he thought I deserved to know. I sat there with my coffee getting cold, and honestly, I wasn't even surprised. Part of me had known, deep down, that something more was going on. I thanked Derek for telling me, and he asked if I was okay. I realized I actually was okay. Finding this out hurt, but it also confirmed that leaving was 100% the right call. I wasn't angry, I wasn't heartbroken, I was just done. That night, Mia posted this long public apology on Facebook, tagging me in it. She wrote about how she'd been a terrible girlfriend, how she'd taken me for granted, how she was going to therapy now and working on herself. It had like 200 comments, people telling her she was brave for admitting her mistakes, that I should give her another chance, all this noise. I read it once, untagged myself, and blocked her on everything. Instagram, Facebook, Snapchat, even Venmo. My friends thought I was being cold, said the apology seemed genuine, but I knew what it really was. A performance, one last attempt to manipulate me into coming back. A real apology would have been private, would have been about making amends, not about managing her public image. 2 months after I left, I was in the best shape of my life, killing it at work on a new project, and actually enjoying being single. I'd go to boxing 3 times a week, hang out with Mike and my other buddies on weekends, take myself out to dinner without having to check if Mia wanted to go somewhere else. I started reading again, something I'd barely done during our relationship because Mia always wanted to be doing something, going somewhere, never just sitting quietly. I was learning that being alone wasn't the same as being lonely, and that I'd rather be alone than be with someone who made me feel like I wasn't enough. For months after I left Mia, I joined a book club. I know how that sounds, super nerdy, not exactly the place you'd expect to meet someone. But my coworker Sarah from the UX team had been bugging me about it for weeks, and I figured why not. It met every other Thursday at this coffee shop in Fremont, and the first night I showed up, there were maybe 12 people sitting in a circle talking about some thriller novel I'd barely finished. That's where I met Charlotte. She was sitting across from me, wearing glasses and this oversized sweater, making these really thoughtful points about the book's themes that actually made me see the story differently. After the meeting, we ended up talking by the coffee counter for almost an hour about books, about Seattle, about life. She was 27, worked as a graphic designer, had this quiet confidence that was the complete opposite of Mia's need to be the center of attention. Charlotte was the kind of person who listened more than she talked, who asked real questions and actually cared about the answers. We exchanged numbers, and I left that coffee shop feeling something I hadn't felt in a long time, genuinely excited about getting to know someone. We took it slow, really slow, which was perfect for both of us. Coffee dates that turned into dinner dates, walks through Discovery Park on Sunday mornings, checking out art galleries and used bookstores. Charlotte had been in one serious relationship before. It ended badly, and she wasn't in any rush to jump into something new. Neither was I. We talked about our pasts honestly. I told her about Mia, about the party situation, about how I'd learned the hard way that you can't make someone respect you if they're determined not to. She told me about her ex who'd been emotionally manipulative, how she'd spent a year in therapy learning to trust her instincts again. We bonded over our hard-learned lessons, and there was something healing about being with someone who understood that relationships should make your life better, not more complicated. 3 months into seeing Charlotte, we were officially together, and it was just easy in a way I didn't know relationships could be. She had friends, I had friends, and we trusted each other enough not to make it weird. She never made me feel like I had to compete for her attention, and I never gave her a reason to doubt where I was or who I was with. It sounds basic, but after Mia, basic felt like a luxury. Then one Saturday in early March, almost 7 months after I'd left Mia, Charlotte and I were at Trader Joe's doing our grocery shopping. We were in the produce section, debating between regular pasta and the cauliflower version, when I heard this familiar laugh behind me. I turned around, and there was Mia, standing 10 feet away with some guy I'd never seen before. She looked different, thinner, tired, her hair shorter than she used to wear it. The guy next to her had his hand on her lower back, possessive, and he was looking at his phone while she was trying to show him something. She glanced up, saw me, and her whole face changed. The guy noticed her reaction, looked at me, then immediately grabbed her hand and pulled her closer to him. It was this weird territorial move that would have been funny if it wasn't so obvious. Mia said something to him. He shook his head no, but she walked over anyway. Charlotte noticed the tension and squeezed my hand, asking quietly if I was okay. I nodded, and Mia stopped a few feet away from us, awkward as hell. She said hi. I said hi back, and there was this painful silence where nobody knew what to say. Finally, she asked how I was doing, and I told her I was doing really well. I introduced her to Charlotte, and you could see Mia sizing her up, taking in the casual clothes, the glasses, the way Charlotte was holding my hand. Mia's boyfriend, and I use that term loosely because he looked miserable, came over and introduced himself as Brad. He immediately started this interrogation disguised as small talk, asking where I worked, what I did, how long Charlotte and I had been together. Mia looked embarrassed, kept telling him to stop, but he kept going. Charlotte handled it perfectly, answered his questions politely, but didn't engage beyond that. After a few minutes of this awkward conversation, Mia touched my arm and asked if we could talk privately for just a second. Brad's face went red. He started to protest, but I said sure, why not? Charlotte said she'd grab a card and meet me by the checkout, gave me this look that said she trusted me completely, and walked away. Brad reluctantly followed her, leaving Mia and me standing by the organic bananas. Mia took a deep breath and said she was glad she ran into me because she'd wanted to reach out but didn't think I'd want to hear from her. She'd thought a lot about what happened between us, about how she'd handled things, and she realized I was right to leave. She'd been selfish and immature, keeping those guys around because she liked the attention and validation, and it had nothing to do with me not being enough. Therapy had helped her see that, but by the time she figured it out, I'd already moved on. I listened, and then I told her something I'd realized over the past few months. That situation we went through, as painful as it was necessary for both of us. She needed to learn those lessons, and I needed to learn that I deserved better. I told her I hoped she was happy, and I genuinely meant it, because her being happy or unhappy wasn't my concern anymore. She smiled, this sad little smile, and said she could see I was happy, that Charlotte seemed really good for me. She said she was getting there, that Brad was helping her work through some things, even though I could tell from the way she said it that she wasn't anywhere near where she wanted to be. We talked for maybe 5 more minutes, nothing deep, just catching up like old acquaintances who used to know each other well. When we said goodbye, there was no hug, no promise to stay in touch, just a mutual understanding that we'd both moved on to where we were supposed to be. I found Charlotte by the checkout, and she asked if I was okay. I told her I was better than okay, that seeing Mia had just confirmed what I already knew, that leaving was the best decision I'd ever made. We loaded our groceries into my car, drove back to my apartment that I'd slowly turned into an actual home, and made dinner together while some jazz played in the background. Later that night, lying in bed with Charlotte reading beside me, I thought about how different my life looked now compared to a year ago. I wasn't the guy sitting at home wondering where his girlfriend was or who she was with. I wasn't anxious or paranoid or constantly second-guessing myself. I was just Alex, living my life, boxing 3 times a week, reading books, dating someone who made everything feel simple and right. The whole thing taught me that sometimes the trash takes itself out, and sometimes solving your problems means having the courage to walk away from situations that don't serve you. Mia did me a favor that night at the party, even if she didn't mean to. She showed me exactly who she was, and I finally believed her. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments, drop a like, and don't forget to subscribe for more